You need some. You need a coffee cup? Is that-
No,
You don't need it.
There's one right here.
That's not hers.
that's not mine. Get that white one.
What white
We
one?
had company this morning.
Got a certain
Yeah,
cup,
that one.
certain one you gotta drink
Just-
out of?
Yeah, that was Grandma Dellinger's, and then it was your mother's. And I got it from you.
You got it from me?
Yeah, or somebody.
She probably went in
It
your
wa-
house and stole
I
it.
think I told you I wanted it or something.
Oh.
And anyway, that I drink out of that every morning. Look at here. You want to see that one? But I'll clean it up
My
and
gosh, that's rotten.
well, you
Well, it
gotta
might
cut.
be.
You gotta cut the rotten out.
Is
And
it
then,
worth all that work?
yeah,
Sure it
because
is. Grandma don't
because
charge
I
for
make,
it, man.
boy, some of these are so hard I can hardly cut them in two.
Uh,
Then you cut everything out of them, and
did you say you had some coffee going on?
no,
Oh.
don't have any. We had
Well,
company this morning.
Carol
and-
and-
Why don't I make some?
I like this place we're sitting here with all this crap.
Yeah.
Oh.
It doesn't see that.
It's already on there.
They don't all the time.
Well, when I was a little kid, I used to love apples. And I'd crawl up in the tree and I'd pick apples, and Mama, somebody'd say, Lorraine's in the apple tree again. And she'd come out there and she said, get out of that apple tree. She said, you're going to have a bellyache. And I'd eat those little green suckers just like you eat green apples. And so I'd have to get down off the apple tree. But I was back up there as soon as nobody was looking. But anyway, we had a wonderful childhood. And then the winter we had 6 sets of skis. And all we had to do was walk out the door and go through the gate and get our skis on and just slide down the hill. We had 3 big pair of skis that the big boys used and 3 pair of smaller skis that us girls used.
And you use these for like sleds?
Yeah, well, and then we had, yeah, we'd actually ski. Could stand up. Oh, sometimes we'd plop halfway down. And then there was another hill on the other side that we had an old surrey with the fringe on top, but the fringe was all gone. There was just the surrey. And Eldon was big and strapping, and the boys would get, so they'd pull the tongue up, and they'd push that wagon up the hill through the what was our alfalfa patch. And we girls would trot on up there, and everybody jump in, and Eldon was holding the tongue up. Well, he was the last one to jump in, and then he would guide it down the hill with his tongue, you know. And we'd go down the hill and out on the flat as far as it'd go. Then I'd have to go do it again. And so we did that, and that was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with it. And when we went to church, when I first can remember, we got in that surrey with the horses, and we went 7 miles to church in that surrey. Got pretty cold sometimes. But then we got my dad bought his Oakland. I don't remember what year it was, but oh boy, it was sharp. And it was kind of like a caramel brown, pretty. And had best car in the churchyard because he got it from his father, and he sold Oaklands and Pontiacs. Anyway, what else do you want to know about my childhood?
Just keep around.
Keep rattling on.
How many kids?
There was 9 in our family, and there was 5 boys and 4 girls. There's 3 boys, and then 4 girls all together, then 2 more boys. And so Walter would always take my side when Margaret and I Margaret and I were the fighting two. She was my fighting sister. And Mama would
You guys fight with your fists and stuff?
just claw hair and just poke, and just one poke would start a good fight. I remember one time I was naughty to her. She didn't start them all, but she started her share. Anyway, we went to the fair, and I got one of these sticks with a dice on top. We were supposed to be washing clothes, and I'd take that stick and I'd poke her with the stick end, with the dice end. And oh man, the fight was on. She'd come over and tackle me. Now she could outrun me. We got in a fight outside and she got away from me. I could never catch her. But boy, if I could ever catch her, I could just pound the dickens out of her because she was skinny and I was chunky. and Art too. See, Art was the one right above her. And if he couldn't catch her either because he was heavy and she just run like a deer. But if we ever caught her, boy, we could really get even with her in short order. One time, Art and Margaret got to fight in the yard, and I don't know what it was about, but he was after her, and she run in the house, and he followed her, and she run upstairs, and he was plodding along following her, trying to catch her. She went out on the sleeping porch, which was an outside porch that had 4 beds on it. And she opened the screen and went out on the roof of the north porch and jumped 8 foot off. And to this day, I don't remember if he says, "Old girl, I'll get you later," or if he jumped down after. I've forgotten which it was. But anyway, we had some good times and some bad times. And let's see, then we went to school. We had to walk a half mile up through the alfalfa field and down the hill to the school. And so Mrs. Holland was our teacher, and we just went through the 8th grade, and then I went to high school in Wabasha. And my sophomore year, Mama sent Rita and I out to North Dakota, and we went to the St. Mary's Plains College. Is that it? No, it was, I can't think of the name now. But anyway, we went out there, and I was a sophomore, and I was taking 2 years of German and 2 years of Latin. Well, the Latin teacher we had in first year of high school, she really drilled us. So by the time I went out there and got a relaxed teacher out in North Dakota in Devil's Lake, well, I knew more at the end of the first year than we did there at the end of the second year, because she just didn't teach, it wasn't a good teacher. But anyway, I never used either one of them. All I can remember is "Equis" is horse in Latin, and "Ich liebe dich" is "I love you" in German. And that's just about
That don't sound right.
That's just about the extent of my knowledge.
And you can count.
Unus, duo, tres, quattro, quinque, sex, seven, 9, sane. Yeah. I can count in German. What was that, German or Latin? I don't even know anymore. But anyway, then let's see, we went, I graduated in St. Felix High School in Wabasha, Minnesota. And Wabasha is the town where this movie, what is it? Dirty Old Men. Grumpy Old Man. Grumpy Old Men.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. Well, that's I wasn't a boyfriend, but this neighbor of ours was in the back of the car with us, and he decided to kiss me, and I decided he wasn't going to. So we kind of had a fight, and he finally kissed me, and I went in the house as soon as I could, and I just washed my face all over. Nasty him. But anyway, then I went with Marky Diedrich for a while, and he got exploring, and I slapped his face. And so he wouldn't take me out anymore. These are the bad ones.
I met him.
These are the bad ones. And then I had a blind date one time. My girlfriend, Iola, my very best girlfriend in grade school, I introduced her when we got in high school to a boy. And he was a real good looking boy, and she married him. Well, one day he decided he had a friend, and we'd go on, get me, and we'd go on a blind date. Well, that was fine, except it was a Hager boy, and he just, Anyway, when we went home, he got drinking pretty bad and drove, and Iola was with us, and so was Paul Marks. And he drove into where his house was, and he says, "Well, I'm going to bed." Got out of the car, took the keys, and went to bed. Wasn't that a nice double date? And Paul went in to try to get the keys, and he came out and he says, he won't give them to me. I said, let me out of this car. I says, come on, Paul, I'll get them from him. So I took Paul in there with me, and I told him I wanted those keys, and that was it. And he handed them over. So Paul took us girls home, and then he went to his house and left his car sitting on the street in Kellogg, and called him the next day and told him where it was. But anyway, that was. But I met Odie, your dad.
Granddad.
Yeah, Tim's granddad. I met him at the Variety Club. He was the leader of the band. And another girl and I had gone down there singles. In Rochester, there was 13 girls to every boy ratio because of all the nurses. Anyway, I met him. Well, he used to sing. He stood out front and sang over the mic all the time. And I didn't pay much attention to him. And then he decided he liked my girlfriend. She was a red-headed, skinny model. And so, anyway, she had to leave town. But then Odie and I were still good friends. And we dated some. And finally he told her the wedding was off. And she wrote back and said she was going to put her bride's dress on and go kill herself. And he called me frantic that she was going to kill herself, and I said, she ain't going to do nothing, don't worry about it. And she didn't. But anyway, we were just friends, good friends. And then one night he got up on the stage and he sang, "Oh, how I miss you tonight." And I was dancing. Every time I looked up there, he was looking at me. And so then after that, we went to another nightclub that stayed open a little longer. And he was drinking at the bar. And I went up to him. This was a brazen thing to do. And I told him I liked that song he was singing. And he said, well, he was singing it. He was singing it for me. So that became my song, "Oh, How I Miss You Tonight." And I think, Tim, you recorded it for me a little bit. But then we started going together, and I don't know, as the years grew, we liked each other better, and then we decided to get married. They took him to the service, and he was down in Leesville, Louisiana, when I left Minnesota to go down and get married. I was working at Lovelace's at the time, and we were in Dayton, Ohio. But I left there and went down. I didn't even know it was my wedding day, but it was. And when he got there, he said he had everything all ready. Had well, of course I didn't know anybody down there, so he got some people that stood up for us. I don't know who they were. And had the priest ready and everything to get married. Because he had finished his lessons to become a Catholic and had joined the church. And so we got married down in Leesville, Louisiana. And so we stayed in South Camp 3 nights, and then we moved to North Camp 3 nights, and then I walked the streets with another girl and found, oh, it was terribly hard to find a place to live down there because there was a big North Camp and South Camp, and people were working for $1 and $2 a week for these lieutenants and
Military.
big brass, just to stay with their husbands. They would consider it working. Well, I didn't like $1 or $2 a week, so I walked the streets with this other gal in Leesburg. So then we had this little cottage, and all it had was a bathroom and closet, I guess. Anyway, behind it was a big bunch of pecan trees. So we'd gather pecans. You couldn't afford to do anything on the wages we got. And so we'd eat pecans at night, and we'd say to one another, he called me Boogie, because I was his boogie woogie girl. Anyway, he said, and then it got turned down to "Hey Boog." But he says, "What are you doing, Boog?" And I said, "Nothing." We were picking nuts, nothing. So that was one of our jokes, was picking nuts. But that was our entertainment for the evening because we had no, well, we had a radio, but we didn't have TV. And while I was there, why, he made a little ironing board so I could iron clothes. It was about 2.5 feet long, and came to a point, and it was real nice. I could get the job done, ironing somebody's shirts or something.
Uniform.
Yeah. And so anyhow, we were down there. We got married November the 5th, and I was there for Thanksgiving.
What year?
Huh?
What year? You got married?
We got married in 1943, November the 5th. And I was there for Thanksgiving, and they had all kinds of stuff on the table, all kinds of goodies. Cigarettes by the pack, so pretty everybody got a pack of cigarettes. And grapes and nuts and fruit, oranges, and everything. And everybody could take a load of stuff back to camp with them. Anyway, then I worked at a cafe down there. Because, you know, you didn't want to sit home all day in a little cabin. So I worked in that cafe, and I was working there from November till after Christmas. Well, Christmas, I was supposed to go meet him. He had been transferred to to Alabama, Gadsden, Alabama. And so I was supposed to go over and meet him, and I went down and got my things checked, my clothes and everything, and got my ticket. And you know, when I come to get on that train, they wouldn't let me on. It was soldiers only. They refunded my ticket, but what good did that do me? So I went back and I offered to work double shift on Christmas at that cafe because a lot of people wanted off and several of them had moved out. And about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Odie finally called me from Gadsden, Alabama, and he says, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Well, heavens, yes. I'm working double shift here at the cafe," and because I couldn't get on the train. But I had sent him $10 that his sister had sent me, and I thought, well, this should go to Odie. So I sent him the $10, but he hadn't gotten it. And he said, "I have worried. I slept under the Christmas tree with my trumpet or cornet for a pillow. And I slept under the Christmas tree at the YMCA. And I've checked every airport, every train, and every bus that came into this town. And I've worried sick about you, wondering what happened to you, that you just didn't come." And he hadn't gotten my wire. So anyway, he got through. There was a big flood or tornado down there. He got through by an emergency call, and they called up around the north and got down to Leesville with an emergency call. And that's how, because I tried to call him, but I couldn't get him. So anyway, right after Christmas, I was waiting on a girl in the booth, and she's crying. And I asked her if she had a problem. She says, "Yes, my husband's been shipped out, and I got to go back to Alabama." I said, "Where?" And she said, Camp Seibert, Alabama. I said, "Can I ride with you?" I said, "My husband's been shipped over there too." And she said, "Yeah, you can ride with me." So it got around there, and there was about 3 of us waitresses stopped, rode with her over to, there was 3 of us rode with her over to Camp Seibert to the office, and then she left all of us off, and we all found our husbands. And joyous day when you finally got there and found him. Oh gosh, it was good. And so
But he was happy to see you, huh?
Yeah, because that was his first Christmas absolutely alone, and my very first Christmas away from home and absolutely alone. And so that was a tough Christmas.
You didn't have any kids by then?
No, I didn't have David until 11 and a half months after I was married. Yeah, he was born, my brain's slow. He was born in October the 19th in 44. We were married a year before that in November. Anyway, then he was shipped out again, and I had to follow him. Oh, I think I was 3 months pregnant when I followed him to Texas. He was sent to San Antonio, Texas. And so I went by bus, I guess it was, or train, and went to San Antonio, and we lived there. until just before David was born. He got orders then to go overseas. So he got an emergency furlough to take me up to Minnesota, and he did. And then David was born at St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, Minnesota, and he had to go back to camp right away. Well, David was born the 19th of October, and he didn't get to see David until I stayed with my mother. She was sick that winter, and I stayed with her till David was 3 months old, and then she finally got so she was. My mother went with me out to the hospital that morning. My dad and mother took me out to St. Mary's from Plainview, Minnesota, which is about 35-40 miles. And Mama stayed with me all day until the bus. She knew she had to go back on the bus because my dad was going to meet the bus and pick her up and take her home. Well, finally I said, Mama, she's wanting me to know if she should stay longer. I said, no, Mama, just go home on the bus and get some rest. And I said, I'll be all right. Well, then that was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. He wasn't born until just right after midnight. But I was okay. No, I wasn't scared. I had a good doctor, lady doctor. And everything was fine. He weighed 6 pounds and 12 ounces, I think. And those days, they didn't turn you out in 3 days. They let me dangle my feet off the bed the 7th day. And then I got to go home the 11th day. Boy, I'd hate to pay that at the hospital. He was 3 months old by the time I got to go on the train down there. And of course, it was hard for me to go to the bathroom and hold a baby, so I always had to find some lady that would hold the baby while I went to the bathroom, and pray that she didn't get off the train in some way and take him with her, because I didn't want to lose him. Well, he had the colic right at first, and Mama said, just give him a tiny bit of whiskey and some 7-Up, and that cured it. So then he went to sleep after all that crying, and I went down and visited Iowa in the afternoon. But he was a good baby, and Odie was so tickled to see him. Oh, so tickled. And he says to me, let me go shopping. He said, why don't you go shopping? I just want to stay and hold him. So, and he wrote me a letter while I was still in the hospital, and he drew a little man with a little boy, and they were fishing on a fishing bank, and that was he and his little boy. Couldn't wait for it till he went fishing with him. Mm-hmm. And he drew a picture of the trumpet and different things he sketched on the outside of that envelope. I still have the envelope someplace, I don't know. David was going to throw it away, and Scott noticed it, and the letters in there I had written to him. And so Scott took it and he taped those, copied those letters. I think every one of the kids got one of them. And so Connie was glad to read it. She says, well, David was always on track. He said he was going to be someplace, he was there, and he was steady as could be. You could always believe exactly what he said, because that's exactly what he did. And he didn't get in any trouble. He didn't drink a beer till he went to the service. He applied to be an officer's training, and he did get to finally go in. We had to tell every place we ever lived as he grew up, to see if he'd ever got in any trouble.